Hello there and welcome to another video where I'm going to be talking about Victoria 3. This time we're going to be having a look at the monthly update 4, where there is a lot of information to be gleaned. Not from the video itself, because I do think it is probably something that would be worth your time to go and watch the video. There's a lot of effort put into it and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to be looking at this. These are the images that are going to be shown throughout the video, and there's some interesting stuff in here that I would like to talk about, so that is what we're going to do. To start with, a bit of mass migration. We have English migration going to Thrace. Thrace, of course, is the location of the city of Constantinople/Istanbul, and English migration there is interesting for one main reason, and that is because it was impossible for this to happen in Victoria 2. Victoria 2 had a migration system where you needed to have your capital in the New World, and could lead to very awkward situations, like, for example, if you as Belgium went and conquered the island of Jamaica or bits of the Caribbean, and then lost all of your land in Europe, your capital would then, of course, be in the New World. But then if you reconquered your land in Europe, you would still have your capital in the New World, in Jamaica, and all of the pops that would be, migrating and stuff could still do that. But now they would also go to Europe. So this technically isn't impossible, but it's kind of impossible at the same time, without funky stuff happening. Also, very interesting that it is English migration and not British migration. British was the catch-all culture for all of the, land in Britain. There was no English, Scottish, and Welsh. It was all British, and now it seems that that is being further split up into the respective areas, which I do like quite a bit. It's very nice. Also very good for Scottish people who don't like being called English or British, I think. I don't know. Some Scots, I assume, do. I don't. You know what? Let's move on. Move on to the next image, which is this one here. This is also showing migration growth, and we can see how much people are coming in via migration and via growth. So this is for California. Yeah, California here. It's got high migration attraction, and as such, it is receiving 30,000 people every single week. Every single year. Annual, my bad. Compare that to its projected growth. There's quite a big difference, like 5 times as much. And considering the population of it is only, 140,000, this is going to catch up to it in, 4 or 5 years? It's going to double the population of California, which is kind of cool. You can see exactly where the immigrants are coming from. 579 from Utah, Chiapas, Chihuahua, Durango, Yucatan, Mexico, Morelia, Jalisco, and Zacatecas last week. Lovely stuff. I quite like that we're having such a nice breakdown of what is going on in our land. Also seeing, obviously, the population, what they're up to, how many people are secure, how many people are starving, all that kind of thing is quite nice. Moving on! We have more migration. These next two are inextricably linked together. We can see the migration attraction, of course, for California still, and seeing where it is coming from. But if you want to know why, well, there's the greener grass campaign, which is something that you as a country can do. Say you want people to migrate to California, then you've got various things you can do. Greener grass is one of them. It's also very sparsely populated. There is a lot of arable land available, and as such, it's getting a high modifier for migration attraction, because it's just, if you come here, you can build a farm, and no one's going to tax you or anything. So it's very nice in that regard as well. And then from the other side of the coin, we see the migration attraction for Nevada. People are mostly leaving because it has got a terribly low migration attraction of 3.1, and the standard of living is only 6.3, because there's a whole lot of turmoil going on there. This map's going to be very useful. It's so nice to see it in this way, because in Victoria 2, if you looked at, migration map modes, the entirety of the USA would be green, and then all of Europe would be red, because migrants go out of Europe into America. That's kind of the story of Victoria too. And it doesn't really tell you where they're going. Whereas now we're seeing exactly where the people are going, and you can tell where they're coming from as well. And it's just nice. It's just nice. You can see as well as from Dakota to Lakota, and then this northern coast is doing well, the southern coast ain't doing well. I like it. I love this quite a lot. It's real nice. Next up, we have law support, and seeing how many people, or who is going to be supporting the various different laws. So for universal suffrage, it is being enacted. 26.9% of the population are in favor, 27.1% are not in favor, and then there's a whole, almost 50% are completely neutral on the subject. And then there's some laws with governmental or movement support here. Obviously, we heard about how different movements in the country can be in support or, against various laws. So you can see exactly how those are going as well, and the various clouts of your interest groups as well. Of course, without the rest of the information, like what color represents which interest group, you're not really going to glean too much from this, but it will be nice in context to see. Next up, we have political movements and the pop support for said political movements. So things like poor laws, there is 17% support for it, and 9% of people are so in support of it that they're becoming kind of radical. Radicalism, of course, being generated by turmoil for the most part. So, almost 15,000 pops support the political movement because they belong to an interest group that approves of enacting poor laws. And then 136,000 support the political movement because they believe enacting poor laws improves their status or wealth. You don't have to be in an interest group to support a law, and even if your interest group opposes such a law, you can still, as a pop, individually support it, which is quite nice. It's a lot of granularity there with what people want, which is it's enough. Everything it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice. Everything's kind of nice. Let's move on. Again, we have some more political movement stuff, and this time it is about radicalism. So these guys are trying to restore national supremacy. Yep, that causes quite a lot of radicalism because it's 67% of it, and the clout of angry supporting interest groups is at 64% here. Turmoil increases radicalism, and radicalism, if you want to succumb to the radicals, you'll be able to, pass these kinds of laws if that's what you desire. If you pass a law that maybe the radicals, are against, then you'll have a restorationist kind of movement. So that's what this one is, restoring national supremacy. It seems like the country has moved away from national supremacy, and these guys want to bring it back. Next up, we have more stuff about radicals as well, and the reasons why people are becoming radicals. So here we have the Industrialists. Their approval is unhappy. Why are they unhappy? Various reasons, probably. Mostly turmoil, starvation, that kind of thing is most likely. And then you can see they have active laws and how they are supporting or in opposition to these. So industrialists are pretty cool with presidential republic, elected bureaucrats, all that kind of stuff, but they don't like public schools. But generally their total approval is higher because there's only one thing that you have that they don't like. I can hopefully imagine that this won't become too terribly long if you have too many laws. But like I said, we don't know for sure how many laws there are going to be in the game, so maybe you might end up with a very long list. Who knows? So law changes will radicalize the industrialists. They disapprove of the change from no migration controls to migration controls, probably because industrialists like migration because then they can get cheaper labor. Makes sense for them. You can see other factors as well there and all of that good stuff. Next up, more radicals again. They're just seeing how many radicals are in the total workforce, and then radicals increase turmoil, turmoils increase radicalism. It's a pretty terrible cycle that you don't really want to have happen, but sometimes it happens. It's nice as well that we see radicalism on the UI as standard, right? It's there, it's always going to be up top, so you don't have to go into a separate menu to find out what radicalism is, happening in your country, which is lovely. And then these ones are, of course, I believe, loyalists. Total population, radicalist population, and loyalist population. Lovely stuff. All right, we have trade unions here, the interest group of trade unions, and you can see what ideologies they like. They are absolutionist, they are proletarian, egalitarian, they're populist, and then for abolitionist, it means they don't like slavery, which is, it's quite good. It's quite good to not like slavery. Their approval, though, is unhappy because maybe you are, as a country, have a bit of slavery. With the leader's name, Mario Fragoso, I believe that perhaps we're looking at a Hispanic country, Spain maybe, or potentially Mexico, something like that, who both, they have slavery. I'm not sure. So at the moment, this country, I'm not sure who it is, they've got indentured servitude and slave trade. They have No, they don't. I don't actually know which one they have. This is just their stance rather than what they have going on right now. So, yeah, who knows what this country has? It actually might be Brazil, looking at the shape of this continent. Yeah, I think it might be Brazil. I don't know. I'm not gonna speculate. There's no way to know. I don't think. So, all right, moving on. The abolitionists don't like slavery. Who knew? Oh, it is Brazil. Aha! I was right. And then, of course, we can see that every interest group has a leader or a guy on top. I don't know what you'd call it. He's the politician who is in charge of the abolitionist movement. And you can see that he personally has his own foibles, I guess. He is quite bigoted, even though he is an abolitionist. And he's also a very experienced diplomat, which might help you in other regards. Interesting that a bigoted person is abolitionist, but, whatever. I guess there's many ways to be bigoted, and you can be bigoted while still believing that people who I don't like because of various reasons, bigoted reasons, they should still be free. I just don't like them. Doesn't mean I want them enslaved. Yeah, it makes sense. Okay. Right. And this one is, probably my favorite image of this whole group. A journal entry. It's not quite as interesting and, flavorful as the newspaper articles in Victoria 2, but the fact that we have journals here for paranoid slave owners is pretty cool. It's just that little bit of flavorful additions to see how your interest groups and such are getting on. So, for the paranoid slave owners here, the unrest that originally triggered the paranoia appears to have settled down somewhat, but the fears of revolt persists. A low but noticeable level of turmoil among slaves in some states has caused slaveholders to grow increasingly concerned about possible slave revolts. It's both awesome that it's got this kind of flavorful kind of extra bit to go along instead of, there's 10% of slaves are now super unhappy, so 14% chance of a slave revolt in the next 5 months or something like that. That's very mechanical, it's very cold, whereas this is very flavorful. It's real nice to see this kind of thing, and it's also giving you information, right? It's giving you information about how the slaves are, they're experiencing turmoil, and that the slaveholders are concerned, although I don't know if concerned about revolts is really a mechanic, but the slave revolts themselves are. So yeah, I think this is awesome. It kind of shows you that there's potentially going to be a revolt soon, and that the reason for that is the turmoil. I think it's awesome. I love this. All right, we have plantations, specifically the sugar plantation building in Rio de Janeiro and the workforce that works there. So you can see it's got aristocrats, clergy, farmers, and slaves all working here. And we also know from the dev diaries that slaves are replacing laborers in buildings where slavery is permitted, right? So for the sugar plantation, if slavery was banned, instead of the slaves, they'd all be laborers. Farmers are a little bit of a more educated, higher class than laborers. Laborers are the manual workforce, whereas the game considers farmers to be the ones with the knowledge of how to farm, so that's why they're also not being replaced by slaves. So, yeah, no, makes sense. Love it. You can see, obviously, their standard of living as well. The aristocrats are affluent. Who knew? Clergy are middling. Farmers are impoverished. And, of course, the slaves are struggling. If they were, I think it's below 5, then they would turn into starving. And you would have probably some problems there. The amount that you have, like their population would start going down as, pops start dying to starvation. So, you don't want that. You don't want that. More pops is more win. More stuff about the sugar plantations. Now we have, again, the building in Rio de Janeiro, and we can see instead of the workforce, we're looking at the information about it, how much productivity it has per employee, and then some little green arrows to tell you that, the profits are going up, everything's good, you should probably keep this building going. It's quite nice. There's a lot of cash reserves there. There's a lot of employment going on. It is just a very profitable, very good building with a lot of stuff going for it. So maybe you might want to increase the size of it from 2 to 3. It's maybe a good idea. Next up, we have the Moluccas, and we're looking at the importation of slaves. They are currently importing slaves from Lega. No idea where Lega is. Not a clue. We can see as well from this image, though, that in the Moluccas, there is the potential to potentially find oil, or maybe rubber, or potentially gold. All of these different kind of hidden or discoverable resources that are here. But yeah, the Moluccas here, there's stuff going on for it. There's slavery, there's potentially some stuff there to find. You can see the infrastructure and the infrastructure usage, though I'm not sure about how the math exactly works, because infrastructure of 40 should be able to have, 40 uses, right? But there's only 9 being used, which works out to 70%. Obviously, there's something going on with ports, right? Because this is an island, and it would need a port to get its goods back to the homeland of the Dutch, right? Which is the Netherlands, of course. But there is, I guess, there is no trade port. I mean, there's one level of it right here. I think that's what this one is. Maybe it needs to increase that, but also the math for infrastructure and infrastructure usage is usually very easy, right? If it wasn't anything to do with an island, it wasn't anything to do with colonies, then the infrastructure here would be simple math of take this, divide it by this, or the other way around. If you had 40 usage and 40 infrastructure, you'd have market access of 100%. If you were using it at, 80 usage for 40 infrastructure, you'd have market access of 50%, right? That's all well and good. But here, that's obviously not happening. I'm pretty sure it's due to with ports, and it would be nice if we saw the reason why, like, infrastructure usage, infrastructure, blocked by lack of ports or something like that. Something along those lines would be really nice to have. It's also potentially behind, so obviously you can see that there is something here. It could be that in the Moluccas there is a state a terrain modifier, a state, or just I think it's called they're called state modifiers, where the jungles of the Moluccas giving negative 30% market access. Yeah, that could be the case. We haven't seen specifically the Moluccas state modifier yet, so that could be something to do with it. But who knows? Who knows? Moving on, we have more slaves. There's a description of slaves. They are treated not as a person, but as property, performing forced labor in various sectors in countries where slavery is permitted. Due to their status, they're not allowed to participate in politics. Right? There's a good reason why this screenshot was in the video, and that is because when talking about slaves, Wiz very specifically mentioned the fact that when making Victoria 3, they wanted to represent everyone on planet Earth. Every single person on planet Earth at the time is going to be represented as a pop, and omitting slaves as a class of person or as a pop, just not having them there, or kind of dancing around the issue of such a very heavy topic, is not at all what is... it's not acceptable, right? when it is so very pivotal to the era when slavery is what drove wars and drove economies, to then just completely get rid of slaves obviously is just not going to work. It's not acceptable. So you need to put in this concept without belittling it, without glossing over it, doing it justice without making a joke of it, and so they've managed to, I think, put the issue of slavery in the game without it being trivial. It's not trivialized. It's done very well. I think it's done respectfully. It's done with a lot of historic authenticity. So I'm quite happy with the way that slaves have been added to the game, and the game will be better for having that historical authenticity in it. Moving on, more slavery stuff. There is a law about slavery here. We can tell that there are 4 separate laws to do with slavery. Either you can ban it, you can have debt slavery, you can have the slave trade, and you can have legacy slavery. So, what are the differences between these? Well, slavery ban is quite obvious. You ban slaves. You ban slavery. There are no more slaves in your country. All of the slaves are emancipated. And potentially you will have revolts or a civil war, perhaps, based on the aristocrats, the slave-owning class, who now have just lost a large part of their workforce. They will their stance on abolitionism will be incredibly negative, and to the point where you're probably going to see these civil wars happen, like happened in the USA. Debt slavery, you have a trickle of slaves based, I think, on turmoil. I don't believe you can import slaves from other countries, and it is just people who are born to slaves aren't born as slaves. So your population of slaves will go down in that regard, but if you have more turmoil, you'll get more slaves as people will, go into debt and become slaves to pay it off. Slave trade, meanwhile, is the kind of slavery that things like the Ottomans maybe had, that Brazil has at the start of the game, where you are still able to import slaves from other countries. Your slave population will grow. It's the worst kind of slavery, let's be fair. And then finally we have legacy slavery, where slaves cannot be traded from outside the country. And this is, I believe, what the USA starts with, right? The slave trade is banned, but slave ownership is still legal. And that's what we see, that's what we see in the USA at the start of the game. And like I said before in the previous panel, there's a lot of work gone into doing slavery justice without belittling the topic, and I think this is a pretty decent way of going about things. We see the pops for slaves, these Afro-Brazilian Catholic slaves, and all I would say about this is maybe not having the extra filigree on the capital letters may be a good idea, because it makes it a little bit hard to read when you've got a lot. It's great for the V in Victoria 3, but having it in a sentence, it's not really what I want to see. This is a bit much. But yeah, pops for slaves. I think it maybe has the same issue that I had with Crusader Kings 3 early access, or the pre-release, in that screenshots of the pops, or in CK3's case, screenshots of characters, looked very glossy, very plastic, because of the way the light is shining. The hair here looks like it's made of plastic because of the way the light is shining back off it. That's not the way that black hair absorbs light or reflects light. This is completely, farcical to me. I don't think light physics on hair is something that Paradox are particularly good at. But when these characters are in motion, because I do believe they will be, they won't just be static images, they will be moving around like we have in CK3. It looks a lot better, and also this is very pre-release, and things can still be worked on, and the hair specifically, I kind of hope is worked on. It looks too plasticky right now. Anyway, Moving on. We have standard of living in, well, the Ottoman Empire. For the most part, it's green. It's looking great. It's not as good as Greece. Standing of living in Greece is pretty good, but there's a lot of green. Except everyone's struggling, so maybe not. The lower strata is very much struggling, and there's a lot of those. Remember, below 5 is starvation, so to be at 7.5 as a standard is pretty terrible, considering there are a lot more lower strata than there are of middle and upper strata as well. So yeah, these guys are really high. They're more than double this. And you're more than like quadruple this. But considering there's so many more of these, the average is obviously being brought way down. But yeah, that'd be a challenge for playing these countries, bringing the standard of living up. And I think that's probably, if I end up doing multiplayer games of this game, which honestly I probably will, one of the qualifiers for victory will probably end up being like the average standard of living in your country, because I think that's kind of important, at least to me. At least I quite like having a higher standard of living, and maybe the pops in the Ottoman Empire would as well. And next up, we have more standard of living, this time in Mexico. So there's a really good standard of living over on the coastline, but then, everywhere else is kind of terrible. So we got 9.46. It's better than in the Ottoman Empire. The lower strata, again, better in the Ottoman Empire. But comparing the middle and upper strata, they're both lower than the Ottoman Empire. So there's a bit more equality. Obviously, not very much, but there's a little bit more equality, and the upper strata aren't quite as well off as they are in the Ottomans. But the average is still struggling. It's still not great. So yeah, you can see the factors obviously affecting the standard of living as well. Services, transportation, and luxury furniture is too expensive, and yeah, that maybe needs to change. It's nice to see these kind of things, because then you can do something about this, right? Transportation is too expensive. Okay, so maybe I want to build railways. I want to build train stations to maybe bring that transportation price down. All the luxury furniture is too expensive. Well, maybe that's because we're importing luxury furniture from the USA and they're, ripping us off. So maybe if we build our own luxury furniture factories, or I guess it would just be furniture factories, and then we have the way, we can change the production method to be luxury furniture, and, we can create it for a cheaper price and, bring that price down, and, the pop standard of living would go up from that. That's all things that you can do, which is, it's kind of cool. I think it's kind of cool. Maybe you think it's kind of cool. I think it's kind of cool. Moving on, we have some Bulgarian Orthodox engineers. These are the middle class, or their middling kind of standard of living. You see how many there are, how many are in the workforce versus how many are dependent on those in the workforce. And it's nice to see both male and female of the pops, right? In the early screenshots, we had just the male, and people pointed out and was like, yeah, maybe we can, make this, a bit better. And it's nice to see that they have now added women as well to this. So, it looks great. It looks absolutely great. This guy works in a logging camp. These dependents, obviously, they're not just, the young, the sick, the elderly, and women in the home, right? They actually do have their own odd jobs as well. You can see that here. The dependents are making a little bit of money from odd jobs. Like maybe this lady is selling flowers. Who knows? But yeah, lovely stuff. Next up, we have the needs. These are the needs of the pops, what they want to have. They need luxury items, services, luxury food, free movement, communication, luxury drinks, household items, intoxicants, and heating, and the prices thereof. I believe that is what they are spending on those needs every week. So there's a lot of stuff that's kind of expensive. I'm not sure what pop that is. I'm pretty sure that is not the pop we've just seen. But who knows? Who knows? Next up, we have Turkish Sunni clerks. We can see the population growth of these. So how many yearly births there are, how many yearly deaths there are. And we know as well that various laws and such can improve these ratios, of course. Like if you are to accept women into the workforce, the yearly births will go down, but the standard of living will go up. you'll end up having potentially a lower birth rate if you do that. The other things that you can do is increasing the healthcare, which would obviously, very much reduce the amount of yearly deaths. The mortality rate would go way down because of that, and you'd see a big boost to the population from increasing healthcare, because healthcare is it's a human right and everyone should have it, always. Anyway, moving on, we have the standard of living in the Ottoman Empire. We can see this again, and the factors affecting it: fish is too expensive, build more docks, services too expensive. I believe services come from urban centers, if I remember correctly. So working on that would be good. Transportation, build some railways. Luxury clothes, build a clothes factory. Production method to luxury clothes. If you can get that, that'd be great. But I think 19% of pop expenditures on fish, definitely that. If I was playing the Ottoman Empire and I saw that, that's an immediate, easy fix that I know that I can do very, very easily. So definitely improving the amount of fish availability in the Empire to bring the cost of living down, or bring the price of it down. Lovely. More stuff, standard of living, this time for the middling class. You can see, the standard of living affecting the pop growth rate. So for a middling pop, you're getting a 3.87, but for it can't really see for those, unfortunately. That's a shame. But yeah, you can see again why these guys are having their low standard of living. But it's the same, same as the previous one. Next up, we have the Greek Orthodox laborers, again showing both male and female, and that they are starving. You can see that there are 8 of them, so they're almost all starved away already, and their population is going down. So they won't last long unless you improve their standard of living. This could be due to many factors, like maybe they're incredibly discriminated against and they can't find work, that kind of thing. But yeah, poor people. Fucking phenomenal mustache, though. Let's be fair. Then we have the Romanian Orthodox peasants. These also live in Dobruja. These guys are just struggling. You can see their population is going up to 39, I believe, a year. How many are in the workforce? How many are dependents? The money that those are getting. And you can see as well here that the workforce brings in £104. The dependents, though, are bringing in £170. So this, however, is just from luxury, from subsistence farms. Maybe you're going to be able to change this tab to be, what are they doing in other areas and such. Or maybe because they're just peasants, maybe get them a job instead of, having them just work on subsistence farms and, the available arable land. We have the Bedouin Sunni Aristocrats. And these guys are wealthy, and you can definitely tell that from their clothes. These people are incredibly wealthy. Their population is going up. You can see how much money they're making. There's 400 dependents that are not earning any money, it seems. And there's only 100 of them working, bringing them quite a lot of money from the tobacco plantations. Yeah, these people are ridiculously wealthy. Their standard of living is huge, and you can tell. Next up, we have New South Wales and the discoverable resources that I spoke about earlier. In New South Wales, there is an undiscovered resource deposit in the state. The resources have a chance to be discovered each day if the state is part of a non-isolated state region. Isolated is a condition that you're in if you don't have enough market access. So if you've got the market access, by having lots of infrastructure, by having the ports, then you will be able to discover resources, which is kind of cool. We're playing... I've never seen this flag before in my life. It's like almost Australia, but then also weird. And I've also never seen this flag before. So if you have seen these flags before, let me know. I'd actually very much like to see them, or know where they're from. I mean, I assume it's Australia because New South Wales is in Australia, but I've never seen the black circle on the flag before. It's kind of interesting. And then, of course, what happens when you discover said undiscovered resources? Gold has been discovered in Morelia. The state can now support additional gold fields. Lovely. We have here the heritage, the homelands of the various cultures, which is another thing that was brought to us in a dev diary not long ago, and this is the Tatar homeland. It's interesting, right? Right. The Tatars consider these 4 states their homeland, but the fact that they're different colors makes me think that, you know, most of the Tatars live here, right? It's a deeper green because there's more Tatars maybe as a percentage of the total population, whereas in, you know, Crimea they've almost entirely been removed from, but they would still consider it their cultural homeland. We could probably end up seeing, I mean, I wish they'd gone with Greek. That would be really interesting to see, because there's a whole lot of land that the Ottomans own that the Greeks would or the Greek culture would consider its homeland. So that would be pretty interesting to see. But yeah, we got the Tartar one. You can see the areas Saratov, Samara, Kazan, and Crimea that they believe their cultural homeland is, and that the Russian Empire owns all of it. So moving on, we have the split state situation where multiple countries own parts of a single state. So that's, where we have New Granada, Bolivia, and Brazil all own a part of Amazonas. Colombia owns, I believe Colombia owns most of it, or we're just looking at it from, we're looking at an area that is owned by Colombia, so never mind. It's actually Brazil that owns most of it, because instead of it being called Brazilian Amazonas, it is just called Amazonas. And then Bolivia and Colombia own parts of that state. So it's going to be interesting the way that works, right? If, say, Bolivia was to conquer a little bit of Amazonas from Brazil to the point where none of them have over 50% of the state, then it would be Colombian Amazonas, Bolivian Amazonas, and Brazilian Amazonas, which is interesting way of splitting, or interesting way of showing this, right? Quite like it. Next up, more Colombian Amazonas, and we're looking at the state traits. This one has the Amazon rainforest, which gives 25% building hardwood output. This is what I was talking about earlier on before as well, where there could be a state trait for the Moluccas, bringing down, you know, the infrastructure, or bringing down the market access, something like that. And we see the Amazon rainforest, while it's good for hardwood output, it's bad for region infrastructure. So yeah, that's probably going to be a very common trait in the Amazon, obviously. Don't know why I even said that. Moving on. We have South Australia. Again, yeah, look, we've got this lovely flag. I guess it is the Australian flag at this time. When did that change? I have no idea. But in Australia, we have the Australian desert. Very bad for agriculture and also very bad for infrastructure. However, there's no infrastructure being used, so the infrastructure is there. It's like 100% market access. All it is some, you know, arable land, so the farms that the peasants are on. If you wanted to improve this area, you'd build maybe some, you probably wouldn't want to do agriculture, but you could build maybe some mines or something like that to get something out of this land without, you know, trying to farm a desert, because that's not going to go too terribly well. Next up, we have the states in India. So as someone who doesn't have a massive amount of knowledge about India, like, maybe I don't know too much about this place, right? There's places here that I think, you know, may be interesting, right? You know, this whole area is basically owned by the East India Company. You can see various state regions that are being split, like this one here. I honestly don't know what the state is called, but each of these have a part of the state. I don't believe any of them have over 50%, so it's going to be Jodhpuri. Yeah, I honestly can't remember what the state is called. Whereas places like Delhi, this is completely owned by one nation, probably the East India Company. Andhra looks like it's all fine as well. Bombay, almost, other than I believe that's a Portuguese holding. That'll be Goa, right? Madras, almost fully owned by, you know, the single country as well, other than Pondicherry. And it's just nice to see the split up of the states. So if you have any opinions like, oh, this piece of land totally shouldn't be in, Gujarat, it should be in something else instead, then, maybe you've got your opinions on that. Who knows? Oh, excuse me. But yeah, it's interesting to see the breakup of the states. It'd be nice to see various other areas as well. Next up, we have Japan. So we are indeed seeing other areas as well. Hokkaido, Toki, Kanto, etc., etc. You can see the various areas there. And also a bit of Korea. You've got Pyongyang, Sarawon, Seoul, and Busan. Yeah, it looks like it's interestingly split up. I'm okay with this. Like I say, I don't know enough about the region to be against it, to be honest. But maybe some others are. We've also got Sakhalin, obviously, in its own as well. Maybe a point of contention between Japan and Russia in the future. Who knows? We have the states of South America, and again, we can see the Amazonas here, where not all of it is owned by Brazil. Apparently, well, it kind of looks like it is there. So I'm not sure what's going on, because that doesn't look like Amazonas. I have no idea. maybe it's all owned by Brazil and it was just split up for the image before. Who knows? But yeah, these are all the states here. Lovely stuff. I have no real comment on whether these are good or not, but it's nice to see them, of course. We have Aragon, which is an unincorporated state in France, apparently. Maybe this is after some occupations or some conquest has been going on. So if France were to take Aragon, it would be an unincorporated state. It's controlled by the country but considered a territorial holding or frontier not formally accepted as part of the country proper. Popes who live here are disenfranchised and do not contribute much to political strength to their interest groups. An unincorporated state can be turned into an incorporated state, which will put it under the direct management of the country central authority, but you're going to need to pay for that in your... It's not influence. It's one of those uses, the points at the top, and I've completely blanked on what they are called. My apologies on that. I can't remember. I can't remember. But you do need to pay one of your resources for it. But yeah, that's the last image that I have for you. What happens when France conquers Aragon? Well, you're gonna have to incorporate it. Makes it fucking bureaucracy. It's literally right there in front of me. It costs bureaucracy points to incorporate it. You can click to do so. Yeah. If you want to do that, maybe you'd want to see how much bureaucracy you have spare before you integrate it, because going over probably not a very good idea. But anyway, that is all of the images that we saw in this video, and very much I do recommend you go and watch it because it is a good video. There's a lot of information to be gleaned from it. It's always interesting to listen to these guys talk about their game, so I recommend you go and watch it. I hope you enjoyed this video as well. If you have any comments, please do leave them in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next one, which will probably be a dev diary video. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.